So, what if your life on Earth isn't just, a random series of events? What if there's a structure to it all? Today, we're diving into this exact idea, the concept of Earth as a school for the soul, a temporary stop, but one with a seriously profound purpose. Okay, let's just get right to it with the big question from our source material. Why should you care right now about what happens after you die? I mean, isn't that a problem for your future self? Or does figuring this out actually give you a massive advantage in the life you're living today? Well, the central idea here is something called soul school. It completely reframes our time on Earth. It's not just a life, it's a temporary, purposeful experience. The goal? Self-mastery. And the final exam, if you will, is graduating from these things called karmic cycles. So in this view, you're not just living, you're actually enrolled in a cosmic curriculum. And this whole concept brings you to a fundamental choice, a fork in the road. Are you a passenger? Someone who believes life is just one random accident after another, something that happens to you? Or are you a driver? Someone who's convinced that life is a destiny you can actually grab the wheel and control? Because according to this framework, that choice changes everything. But why is that choice so incredibly important? Well, according to the source, it's because you're not operating in some neutral playground. Your choice, passenger or driver, directly affects how you deal with a hidden conflict. And that brings us to our next section, the invisible energy thieves. Yeah, the source puts it really bluntly. An invisible war is being waged for your spiritual energy. And we're not talking about physical stuff like oil or land. This is a battle for the very light, the focus, the consciousness that makes you, well, you. The stakes here are literally your own personal power. So, who exactly are the combatants in this unseen war? The source gives them a name, the tempters. They're described as these invisible parasites that literally feed on the energy of our negative thoughts and emotions. Fear, anger, hatred, the heavy stuff. Their whole goal is to farm this energy from us to power their own agendas. And their tactics are perfectly adapted for our modern world. They work to fragment your attention with endless digital distractions, trying to keep us all in this low-energy, trance-like state. The negative vibes they harvest apparently form these low-frequency astral clouds. But their most powerful tactic? It's psychological. It's to convince you that you are nothing more than a worthless accident. Because, think about it, a soul that knows its own power is a whole lot harder to control. All right, so if there's a war going on, you're going to need some tools for defense, right? This is where things get really practical and empowering. Let's move on to our next section, your spiritual toolkit. The cornerstone of this entire toolkit is something called the threefold flame. Now, this isn't just some nice metaphor. It's described as a literal spiritual portal located right in your heart. It's a trinity of power, wisdom, and love, your own personal internal power plant. But here's the catch. Just having these flames isn't enough. The source makes it super clear that they have to be balanced. The blue ray of power, if it's unbalanced, just becomes brute dominance. The yellow ray of wisdom without love turns into a cold, heartless intellect. And the pink ray of love without wisdom and power to guide it can become just misguided, chaotic emotion. Real mastery is about getting all three working together in harmony. Okay, so how do you protect that precious inner flame from those tempters we talked about? The source gives us a primary defensive tool called the tube of light. Honestly, the best way to think of it is as your own personal spiritual firewall. It's an energy field you actively command into existence to block out all those negative frequencies and keep your own energetic space secure. And here's the cool part. Here's how you activate it. The source provides a very specific command, what it calls a fiat. You state, with authority, "Beloved I am presence, blaze thy tube of light around me now." See, the key here is you're not asking for it. You are claiming your authority and commanding it to manifest. And that command leads us to this core concept, the science of the spoken word. It's this idea that your voice is literally a tool for what's called vocal alchemy. When you issue these commands, or fiats, you're actively directing energy and shaping your reality. You're shifting from being a passive passenger to being an active creator. Now, let's level up to a more advanced tool in the kit, the violet flame. This is described as this high-frequency spiritual energy that works like a universal solvent. And its purpose? To dissolve the root cause of stress, of illness, and what the source calls returning karma. It's basically a way to clean up the energy of past mistakes before they show up as bigger problems.
This whole idea of cleaning up past mistakes with the violet flame, it really hints at a bigger system of spiritual accounting. And that brings us right to our next section, which gets into the nitty-gritty of what the Source calls your cosmic bank account.
So when you eventually leave this soul school, what can you actually take with you? The Source has a name for it: afterlife currency. And no, it's not money or property. It's the virtues you've mastered. Things like courage, patience, truth. These become permanent, lasting assets for your soul. And this really makes the distinction crystal clear. On one side, you have all the temporary assets: your physical skills, your high score in a video game, your money, your clothes. And on the other, you have the permanent assets: courage, patience, truth, compassion, wisdom. One set disappears when the body does, the other stays with your soul forever. So how does this whole cosmic bank account work day to day? The system is laid out pretty clearly. Your soul is born with a kind of trust fund of energy. Then, a universal banker gives you a daily allowance from that fund. Now, the size of that allowance depends on how well you've used your energy in the past. You can then choose to invest it in virtue and earn spiritual interest, or you can squander it on negativity and wind up in spiritual debt. So we have the school, the conflict, the toolkit, and the whole cosmic accounting system. But what's the end goal of all this? Where does it all lead? Well, it all leads to this: graduating to a new mission. This is the end game, the entire reason for enrolling in Soul School to begin with. And graduation isn't just about escaping the cycle of reincarnation. It's a huge cosmic transition. It's when the soul moves beyond that mandatory cycle to become an active, conscious co-creator in the universe. In this framework, you don't just retire. You get promoted to a whole new, creative, cosmic profession. Now, here's a really key point from the Source. This whole journey is not about a simple two-choice system. It really challenges that old idea of an eternal heaven versus an eternal hell, suggesting that's more of a human invention for control. In this view, the Creator is logical and merciful. A soul that refuses to evolve might eventually be dissolved back into the cosmic source, but it isn't tortured forever. And maybe the most important part of this whole thing is that you are not meant to do it alone, not at all. There's a whole divine support system available to you. This includes your own mystic higher self, who's like a personal guardian, graduated masters who act as mentors, archangels and Elohim, who are like spiritual special forces, and even a divine partner known as your twin flame. And this entire journey culminates in a profound shift in your identity. The Source captures this transformation perfectly with this quote: "You are no longer just Evan and Evelyn, you are the Crystic Ones." It's about moving from a limited human identity to a much more expanded, sovereign, cosmic one. And so we end up right back where we began, with that one fundamental choice. After looking at this whole framework, life as a school, the invisible conflicts, the spiritual tools, and the ultimate purpose, the question comes right back to you. Are you a passenger, or are you the driver?